graveyard at the edge of Hargrove Crossing held its dead in quiet rows beneath a moonless sky. Vivienne arrived dressed in dark traveling clothes, a shawl drawn close over her face. She was not the only one keeping to shadow that night. A figure waited near the old stone wall at the back of the grounds, cloaked, still, unreadable in the dark. She approached slowly. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then, finally, the figure broke the silence. "Why are you here in Hargrove Crossing?" The question struck her harder than she expected. Not for what it asked, but for how much history lived inside the answer. She did not respond right away. Instead, her mind carried her backward, to a place she had spent years trying not to remember. Years earlier, at Ashcombe, a younger Vivienne had first come to the estate for a matter of business between her father and the Bramwell family. She remembered the grand hall, careful introductions, and the moment Elias Bramwell looked at her as though she were the only person in the room. What began as courtesy became something else, over many quiet visits that followed. She believed in her own foolish way that an understanding had grown between them. One neither had spoken aloud, but both had felt. Then came the letter, announcing his engagement to a farmer's daughter named Adelaide Foster. Vivienne remembered standing at the edge of that wedding, dressed in her finest, watching the man she loved take another woman's hand, smiling because she had no other choice. Burning underneath it all, she had never forgiven Adelaide for it, not truly, not once. News traveled fast in a town as small as Hargrove Crossing. By midweek, everyone had heard the same rumor, passed from porch to porch, from the market stalls to the church steps. A marshal had arrived in town, asking questions about a family from 2 counties over, and about pages missing from a ledger. His name was Elijah Cole, a tall, weathered man, unhurried in his manner, but sharp behind the eyes. He had ridden in alone, taken a room above the tavern, and begun asking after anyone connected to the Bramwell name. At the general store, the shopkeeper spoke of him in hushed, curious tones. At the feed store, farmers traded guesses about what exactly he was hunting for. Vivienne heard the news while fitting a bandage for a neighbor's child. She said nothing, only nodded politely, though her hands grew still for a moment longer than they should have. Elsewhere in town, a bearded stranger heard the same rumor, standing near the blacksmith's stall, listening without appearing to listen at all. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes sharpened. Both of them understood in that instant that Hargrove Crossing had grown far more dangerous than it had been only days before. Marshal Cole, meanwhile, asked one final question of the shopkeeper before leaving. "Can you tell me," he said, "where I might find the Hargrove farm?" The shopkeeper pointed the way without hesitation. By sundown, Marshal Cole was standing at the edge of Marcus and Adelaide's land. Marshal Cole approached the farmhouse slowly, taking in the modest fences, the tended fields, the smoke rising from the chimney. Before stepping onto the porch, he paused, drew a cigarette from his coat pocket, finished it in a few unhurried pulls, and flicked the remainder into the dustbin beside the gate. A small habit, unremarkable to anyone watching. Only the porch itself, and whoever might one day look closely at that dustbin, would ever know he had been there at all. He knocked. Adelaide answered, Marcus close behind her. "Marshal Elijah Cole," he said, removing his hat. "I won't take much of your time." He explained plainly why he had come. A ledger recovered nearly 2 years past in the trial of Josiah Bramwell was missing several of its pages, torn out deliberately before it had ever reached the court. He believed those pages might hold information dangerous enough that someone wanted it gone entirely. "You found that ledger, Mrs. Hargrove," he said. "I need to know if you ever saw more of it than what was presented at trial." Adelaide answered honestly. She had found the ledger exactly as it was, already missing whatever pages he was searching for. She had never seen them. Marcus confirmed the same. Neither of them knew anything more. Marshal Cole studied them both for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I believe you," he said finally. But I don't believe that's the whole truth of this town. He thanked them for their time and left the way he had come, his questions clearly far from finished. Sunday mornings belonged to the church, and most of Hargrove Crossing's women gathered there together, Adelaide among them. Marcus stayed behind that day, tending to a lame horse that could not wait. He did not expect company, but Vivienne arrived not long after Adelaide had gone, carrying a small basket, claiming she'd come to check on a fresh batch of remedies she'd left behind. She lingered longer than the errand required. She spoke softly of small things, moved closer than she needed to, let her hand rest near his on the fence rail a moment too long. Marcus, distracted, did not immediately notice how deliberately she was closing the distance between them. When she finally leaned nearer, her intention unmistakable, something in him caught, hard and sudden. He stepped back, gently but firmly. "Vivienne," he said, "I think you should go." She recovered smoothly, as though nothing at all had happened. Inside the small church, the morning service had just ended. Adelaide stood among a cluster of neighbor women near the entrance, exchanging news and pleasantries as they always did. She did not notice him at first, a bearded stranger standing near the back wall, hat in hand present, but somehow apart from the rest of the congregation. When she finally glanced his way, something about him felt faintly, distantly familiar, though she could not say why. She looked a moment longer than she meant to. Then, deciding it was nothing, she turned back to her conversation. Marcus, wanting only to change the subject entirely, mentioned the marshal's visit instead, the missing ledger pages, the questions that had unsettled them both. Something shifted behind Vivienne's eyes, small, fast, gone before he could name it. "Did he say what he expects to find?" she asked, her voice carefully even. Marcus shook his head. He knew nothing more than what the marshal had already told them. Vivienne excused herself soon after, her composure fully restored. Marcus, already returning to his work, never noticed how much that answer had unsettled her. The women had gathered around a new piece of news, eager to hear it firsthand. "Tell them, Adelaide," one neighbor urged, "about the marshal." So Adelaide did. She told them of his visit, his questions about the missing ledger pages, his suspicion that Hargrove Crossing was hiding something more than it appeared to. The women murmured among themselves, delighted and unsettled in equal measure. The stranger, still near the back wall, listened to every word. His expression did not change, but he had heard exactly what he needed to hear. By the time Adelaide glanced back toward the wall, he was already gone. That evening, after the chores were done, Marcus told Adelaide everything. Vivienne's visit, her closeness. The moment he had stepped back and asked her to leave, Adelaide listened quietly, her hands still in her lap, saying nothing until he had finished. "I should have told you sooner," Marcus said. "I didn't want you carrying one more worry. You carried it instead," Adelaide said softly. "That isn't fair to you either." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adelaide's eyes grew wet, though she smiled through it. "I don't know why I'm crying," she said. "I'm not even sad. Or maybe I am. I don't know anymore." Marcus took her hand. He understood well enough. The ache of still having no child sat beside the relief of a husband who had not wavered, not even once, and both feelings were true at the same time. "We'll go to Millbrook," Marcus said finally. "There's a doctor there, well regarded. We'll get another opinion. We deserve to know the truth of this, whatever it is." Adelaide nodded, wiping her eyes. "And Vivienne?" she asked quietly. "We'll decide that," Marcus said, "once we know more." They sat together a while longer, the fire low, the house quiet around them. Two people choosing once again to face whatever came next side by side. Millbrook lay half a day's ride from Hargrove Crossing, and Marcus and Adelaide made the journey early, hopeful, despite themselves. The hope did not last. The doctor they had come to see was away, called to attend a difficult birth in a neighboring county, not expected back for several days. Disappointed, they turned around before nightfall, retracing the same road home with far heavier hearts than they'd left with. They reached the farmhouse well after dark. Something was wrong before they even stepped inside. The front door stood ajar, though they had latched it that morning. Marcus went in first, lantern raised, Adelaide close behind him. Inside, chaos. Drawers pulled open and left hanging, shelves swept bare, their contents scattered across the floor. Even their bed had been overturned, the mattress dragged askew. Someone had searched every corner of their home, deliberately, thoroughly. They were looking for something, Marcus said quietly, surveying the wreckage. Adelaide knelt near the hearth, sifting through the scattered papers, when something small caught her eye. She picked it up carefully, a cigarette stub half-burned resting near the fireplace. She turned it over in her fingers, a strange unease settling over her, though she could not yet say why. "Marcus," she said, "I think I've seen this before." Marshal Cole had not planned to see a doctor at all that week, but the cough that had settled into his chest days earlier had grown too persistent to ignore. He arrived at the small clinic near midday, expecting nothing more than a bottle of tonic and a quiet corner to wait his turn. He noticed her immediately, the doctor's assistant moving through the clinic with practiced ease, greeting patients by name. He had heard her name mentioned once or twice in town. He filed it away, as he filed most things, and said nothing. Vivienne noticed him too, and recognized an opportunity when she saw one. She attended to him herself, her manner warm, her questions easy and unhurried. She asked how long he intended to stay in Hargrove Crossing. He answered plainly, without much interest in the question. "As long as my work requires," he said. "And what exactly does your work require?" she asked, smiling as though merely making conversation. "Finding what's been hidden," he said. "A few pages torn from a ledger. Someone doesn't want them found." "Have you found them?" Vivienne asked, her voice carefully light. Marshal Cole studied her for a moment longer than the question warranted. "Not yet," he said, "but I intend to, soon enough." He thanked her for the tonic, paid what he owed, and left without another word, leaving Vivienne standing very still behind the counter, her composure intact, though something behind her eyes had sharpened considerably. That night, once the wreckage of their home had been set right as best it could be, Marcus and Adelaide sat together near the fire, the cigarette stub resting on the table between them. Adelaide stared at it, turning the memory over in her mind, reaching for something just out of grasp. "You said you'd seen it before," Marcus said gently. "Where?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't know. It's just a feeling. Something familiar about the way it's rolled, the way it's cut." She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift backward. Faces passed through her thoughts. The marshal removing his hat at their door. Vivienne warm and smiling in their kitchen. The bearded stranger at church, watching from the back wall. Marcus watched her, saying nothing, giving her the silence she needed. Then, all at once, Adelaide's eyes opened. Something had surfaced, not a memory of the cigarette exactly, but of a face she had not thought of in years, and had never once expected to think of again in Hargrove Crossing. Her hand went still on the table. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He leaned forward. "What is it?" Adelaide looked at him, something between fear and certainty settling into her expression. "Oh," she said, "I remember who he is." She said nothing more. The fire crackled low beside them, and outside, the night pressed close against the windows. Marcus and Adelaide came home to find their world torn apart, and Adelaide's sudden realization tonight raises far more questions than it answers. "If you've been putting the pieces together with us, we want to hear your theories." Who do you think Adelaide just recognized? Is it the Marshal? The stranger from church? Someone else entirely? And that cigarette? Who do you think it really belongs to? Drop your predictions in the comments. We might just feature the best ones in episode 4. If you're new here, welcome to our channel. New episodes every third day. Full, immersive, narrated love stories you can lose yourself in. Subscribe so you don't miss what Adelaide remembers.